People with high vibration show these three unusual signs. Your energy introduces you before you even speak. Every soul carries a frequency, a silent vibration that speaks louder than words. In this video, we'll explore the three unusual signs that reveal when your vibration is rising, as understood through the profound lens of Carl Jung and spiritual wisdom. These signs aren't coincidences. They're messages from your higher self, guiding you toward awareness, alignment, and peace. As you listen, reflect on your own experiences. Have you noticed shifts in your energy, your relationships, or the way life responds to you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's uncover together what it truly means to live with a high vibration. Sign 1. Your body becomes a lie detector for your soul. Your body becomes a sacred compass for your soul, translating truth and deception into sensation. As your vibration rises and your spirituality deepens, the intelligence of your body awakens. It no longer functions as a mere physical shell, but as a living lie detector for your inner world. The moment you betray your truth, it reacts instantly. You feel a sharp migraine when you agree to something that contradicts your values, or a sudden nausea when your mouth prepares to say yes, while your heart whispers no. Sometimes, it shows up as a bone-deep exhaustion that drains you when you stay in fake environments or relationships. These experiences are not random or meaningless. They are precise and sacred signals sent by your soul through your body to bring you back to alignment. As this spiritual awakening unfolds, your somatic intelligence and the deep communication between your consciousness and your cells comes online. You begin to notice how your breath shortens when you move away from your authentic self and how it relaxes the moment you return. Your posture collapses under inauthenticity but naturally lengthens and opens in truth. The body no longer merely reacts to emotional stress. It starts responding to something far more subtle: frequency betrayal, the energetic dissonance that occurs when your outer actions betray your inner vibration. This new form of sensitivity is not weakness, but a higher form of perception, guiding you through every interaction, choice, and environment. When your vibration is high, dishonesty toward yourself or others becomes unbearable. Your biology rebels against anything that forces you to shrink, hide, or perform. The job that requires you to wear a mask, the relationship that asks you to silence your soul, the conversations that feed illusions, all of them become heavy, even toxic. Your body begins to act as your guardian, refusing to tolerate falsehoods. It will send you signals in the form of discomfort until you honor your truth again. This rebellion is sacred. It is the way your spirit protects its light through your biology. In this stage of spirituality, the body and soul merge into one coherent system, each vibration echoing through the other. The body is no longer a victim of stress, but a teacher of authenticity. It teaches you that truth feels like ease and alignment, while falsehood feels like tension and fatigue. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." That pain you feel when betraying yourself is not punishment. It is guidance. It is your higher self using your body as a bridge between the material and the divine. To live at a high vibration is to treat your body as your most honest oracle. Every breath becomes a prayer for truth. Every heartbeat, a pulse of inner knowing. You stop analyzing every decision with logic alone because your body already tells you what's right. It expands when aligned, and contracts when misaligned. You begin to live from feeling rather than pretending, from embodiment rather than theory. This is the mark of true spiritual wisdom, not how much you know, but how deeply your entire being lives in truth. When your body speaks, listen closely. It is your soul speaking through the language of sensation, teaching you that spirituality is not something outside to seek, but something within to remember, embody, and become. Comment below. I trust my body's wisdom. If you're ready to align your energy with truth and live at a higher vibration. Sign 2. Synchronicity becomes your new language with reality. When you begin to raise your vibration, reality starts speaking back to you in a new language, synchronicity. It feels as though the universe responds to your thoughts in real time, weaving your inner world and the outer world into one continuous stream of communication. Suddenly, people say the exact phrase that was just running through your mind. You think of someone and cross paths with their loved ones the next day. Or you notice a simple sign or slogan that perfectly answers your silent question. These moments are not coincidences. They are signs of deep spiritual development. Carl Jung taught that when you become integrated, the wall between what's inside and what's outside begins to dissolve. The world stops being something that happens to you, and instead becomes something that happens with you. Life mirrors your psyche, acting as both a teacher and a reflection, guiding you toward greater awareness. At this stage of spirituality, you realize you are not merely watching life unfold, you are co-creating it. Your emotions, thoughts, and intentions are energy forms that ripple outward, shaping experiences and drawing matching frequencies back into your path. This realization brings both liberation and responsibility, because you can no longer hide behind the illusion of being a victim. Every reaction, every thought, every quiet belief sends out a vibration that calls forth something similar. You begin to see that reality itself is a living mirror, one that reflects not your wishes, but your level of consciousness. When your vibration is high, the signs come faster, the connections grow stronger, and the alignment between thought and manifestation becomes seamless. For a person of high vibration, synchronicity is not a random stroke of luck. It is sacred proof that you are in harmony with divine intelligence. The higher your frequency, the clearer your communication with the universe becomes. A peaceful mind attracts peaceful encounters. A heart full of gratitude opens doors effortlessly. Spirituality at this level is not about escaping reality, but about merging with it consciously, realizing that every external event is a symbolic echo of your internal state. When your energy is balanced, life becomes rhythmic, like a dance choreographed by something far greater than logic. This is the essence of true spiritual development, to live with such awareness that you recognize every coincidence as a message, every delay as divine timing, every meeting as a reflection of your inner evolution. Reality becomes your teacher, and synchronicity its language. The moment you accept this, you begin to walk as a conscious participant in creation itself. The universe no longer whispers, so you can hear it clearly, guiding you with signs, aligning you with purpose, and reminding you that your energy is the bridge between thought and manifestation. Sign 3. People polarize around you. Instant attraction or instant rejection. When your vibration is high, You start to notice how people react to you in extreme ways. Some are instantly drawn in, while others recoil without reason. It's not because of what you say or do, but because of the invisible frequency you carry. You walk into a room and suddenly feel the air shift. Strangers either open their hearts to you with trust and warmth, or become distant and uneasy. This polarity isn't random. It's the language of energy. Your frequency acts like a mirror, revealing what others are hiding from themselves. As Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." You become that mirror of understanding, reflecting the unacknowledged light and shadow within them. Those who respond with rejection are often reacting not to you, but to the part of themselves your presence exposes their insecurity, jealousy, or unhealed pain. Hatred becomes their way of avoiding that confrontation. On the other hand, admiration often arises when people sense in you the qualities they secretly desire to awaken within themselves: courage, calmness, authenticity, or spiritual freedom. Through spiritual wisdom, we learn that every encounter is energetic feedback. You don't attract people randomly. Your energy either harmonizes with or challenges theirs. That's why those with high vibration often experience intense reactions from others. They awaken something sleeping in those around them. Carl Jung taught that a truly integrated person becomes both light and shadow, balanced within themselves. When you reach this state, your very presence disrupts pretense. You become energetically loud in a quiet way. Even if you're not trying to be seen, people feel your presence because it exposes their own hidden dissonance. You might not seek attention, yet eyes follow you. Conversations shift when you arrive. People remember you long after you've gone. This isn't ego. It's authenticity resonating at a frequency that cannot blend into the background. If you've ever wondered why you can't remain invisible even when you want to, this is why. Your vibration carries the imprint of truth, and truth always stirs reactions. Some will love you because they recognize that same truth within themselves. Others will resist because it shakes the illusions they've built. But both reactions mean your presence has meaning. It brings awareness. As Jung once said, knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. You remind others, consciously or not, that the journey of awakening begins within. So if people either embrace you completely or turn away suddenly, take it not as a burden, but as a sign that your frequency has evolved. You are no longer here to please or perform. You are here to embody. Your energy is honest, and that honesty polarizes. Through this, you are fulfilling one of the deepest truths of spiritual awakening. When your vibration rises, you no longer adapt to the world's noise. You make it quieter. As we explore the deeper truth behind why high vibration souls often polarize those around them, remember, your energy speaks before you do. If you've recognized moments when people either feel drawn to your light or uncomfortable in your presence, it means your vibration is evolving. Comment below. My energy reveals truth, to affirm your awareness and celebrate your spiritual growth. Stay tuned. Your next transformation begins with the next insight. 4. What these 3 signs really mean. Jungian individuation and coherence. High vibration is not about being flawless or endlessly positive. It is about inner coherence, the state where every part of you, light and shadow alike, moves in harmony. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the integration of opposites within the psyche. When you stop suppressing your contradictions and instead embrace them, something remarkable happens inside you. You begin to radiate a stable energy that feels both grounded and powerful. Your vibration becomes an expression of spiritual awakening, not an act of striving for perfection. True spirituality isn't about pretending to be enlightened. It's about being radically honest with yourself, facing the chaos within, and transforming it into a living order. When your inner world becomes clear, you no longer seek peace outside of you. You embody it. Your body becomes the first messenger of this new alignment. It knows when something or someone is not resonating with your truth. You might feel an instant tightness in your chest when someone speaks inauthentically, or an exhaustion that comes from being around lower vibrations. This is not weakness, it is wisdom. Your somatic awareness has evolved to protect your integrity. The body, as Jung suggested, carries the wisdom of the unconscious. When your inner being is coherent, every cell vibrates in the rhythm of your truth. What others call sensitivity is in fact your soul's shield. You are no longer available for falseness because your nervous system refuses to participate in energy that dishonors your essence. This is the first sign of high vibration. Your body becomes your spiritual compass, guiding you toward what strengthens your soul and away from what depletes it. Then reality itself begins to change its texture. You notice patterns, coincidences, and alignments that seem impossible to explain. You think of someone, and they appear. You make a decision from your heart, and doors begin to open effortlessly. This synchronicity is what Jung described as the acausal connecting principle, where the inner world and the outer world mirror each other. The universe no longer feels random. It feels responsive. It speaks your language because you have become fluent in your own soul. When your thoughts, emotions, and actions are in coherence, reality reflects that harmony back to you. The more conscious you are, the faster life mirrors your energy. This is not magic, it is resonance. The clearer your vibration, the clearer the reflection you receive. And people begin to react to your energy in ways that can surprise you. Some are magnetically drawn to you, while others become uncomfortable in your presence. You notice that your calmness unsettles those who thrive on chaos. Your truth irritates those who live behind masks, and your light amplifies the shadows others refuse to face. This is not your fault, nor is it your responsibility to fix. High vibration is polarizing because your energy acts as a mirror that reveals hidden aspects in others. Some will love you for showing them what they can become, while others will resent you for exposing what they still deny. Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Your very existence becomes catalytic. People either evolve around you or retreat from you. These are not badges of enlightenment or rewards for being good. They are natural consequences of becoming whole. The more you integrate your inner world, the more your external world reorganizes to match that vibration. Spiritual awakening is not about floating above life. It is about being deeply rooted in truth. When you live with coherence, your body, your reality, and your relationships all align with the same frequency of authenticity. This is the quiet power of high vibration It doesn't seek to impress or prove. It simply is. And in its stillness, it transforms everything it touches. 5. The big danger: spiritual ego and psychic inflation. One of the most dangerous traps on the path of spirituality is the illusion of spiritual superiority, what Carl Jung described as psychic inflation. It happens subtly when your ego begins to wear the mask of enlightenment, convincing you that your spiritual growth makes you special or more evolved than others. You start to mistake awareness for achievement, confusing spiritual insight with personal importance. This false elevation isn't high vibration. It's the ego's clever way of surviving through spiritual language. The more you talk about how awakened you are, the more you drift away from true spiritual development. Because genuine awakening has nothing to do with appearing enlightened. It's about becoming deeply human again. You can recognize this trap when you constantly feel the need to talk about how different or advanced you've become, or when you use your spiritual experiences to separate yourself from others rather than unite with them. It may show up as the subtle need to be validated, to be seen as the one who understands, who knows. But the moment your spirituality requires an audience, it loses its purity. True growth doesn't seek recognition. It simply radiates through presence. Jung warned that the ego, when inflated by spiritual power, becomes even more dangerous because it disguises its hunger for superiority as light. The mind begins to whisper that you've reached a higher level, when in truth, the most advanced souls are the most humble ones. Those who carry genuinely high vibration do not announce it. They don't boast about their synchronicities, nor do they speak endlessly about their frequency. Their light speaks for them through the calmness in their tone, the gentleness of their actions, and the quiet peace that surrounds them. They know that being truly spiritual is not about proving anything. It's about living truthfully. Their power is quiet, yet unmistakable, like sunlight that warms without shouting its existence. They understand that the divine does not need to prove itself through noise, and neither should they. The essence of true spiritual development lies in remembering that you are not the source, but the channel, not the light itself, but the lens through which it shines. When you embody this awareness, humility replaces pride, gratitude replaces comparison, and peace replaces performance. Spirituality becomes less about showing how far you've come and more about how present you can be in this moment. The real mark of high vibration is not detachment from others, but deeper compassion for them. It's in how gently you respond to pain, how patiently you forgive, and how quietly you serve without expecting recognition. Leave your likes and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any future insights on higher consciousness and Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom. Remember, true awakening isn't about feeling superior. It's about staying humble in your growth and aware of your own shadows. Type in the comments, "I choose awareness over ego." 6. The final stage. High vibration becomes normal, not a performance. When your vibration reaches its highest level, life stops feeling like something you need to perform and starts becoming a quiet expression of who you truly are. You no longer chase signs, seek spiritual validation, or cling to labels to define your worth. Everything begins to unfold naturally. Your body instinctively rejects what's false. You sense energies without explanation, and synchronicities feel less like miracles and more like the natural rhythm of your life. As Carl Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And at this stage, you finally understand what that means. You can no longer try to be spiritual, because spirituality is not something to achieve. It's the essence of your being. You stop looking for meaning in every small thing and start trusting that meaning is already woven into everything. With this spiritual wisdom, you begin to accept the deeper responsibility that comes with clarity. You see how your choices shape your experiences, yet you don't fall into self-blame. You face uncomfortable truths without turning away, because honesty feels lighter than illusion. You no longer crave comfort in ignorance or validation from others, for you've realized that authenticity brings a peace that no external approval can offer. Jung reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And so, you begin the quiet revolution within yourself, seeing your patterns clearly, no longer fighting them, but transforming them with awareness and compassion. The real work, you discover, is not to appear awakened, but to live awake, to move through this world with integrity, humility, and quiet courage. You stop performing goodness and start embodying truth. High vibration isn't about constant positivity or escaping darkness. It's about standing in light while accepting that shadows still exist. You become like still water calm, deep and unwavering, even when storms pass overhead. You realize that every person around you is also walking their own sacred path. And instead of judgment, you feel empathy. Spirituality is no longer a destination, but a daily practice of presence, where every breath, word, and action becomes a reflection of your soul's alignment. You walk this path not to prove you're enlightened, but to live truthfully, courageously, and compassionately, with the understanding that the highest vibration is not to be above others, but to be fully, humbly, and authentically yourself. When your vibration is high, life doesn't just get easier, it becomes aligned. You begin to attract people, experiences, and opportunities that match your inner frequency. Remember, your energy introduces you before you even speak, so protect it and nurture it every day. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos that continue to elevate your spiritual journey. The empath's most dangerous transformation, Carl Jung's final warning. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung. There comes a moment in every empath's life when their kindness stops being a weakness and becomes their greatest weapon. This is the moment of dangerous transformation, when compassion evolves into clarity and sensitivity becomes strength. Jung warned that the awakened empath is no longer easily controlled, because they have learned to see the truth behind every mask. In today's video, we'll explore what happens when the light inside you learns to defend itself. Have you ever felt that your empathy has both healed and hurt you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might inspire someone who's still finding their power. 1. The awakening of the dangerous empath. Carl Jung described the awakening of the dangerous empath as the moment a deeply kind and sensitive soul finally realizes their true power. And this transformation is not rooted in aggression, but in clarity. Because once you begin to trust your perceptions and stop doubting what your inner knowing has been telling you for years, you instantly become immune to the subtle manipulations that once shaped your choices. This shift marks a true spiritual awakening, where spirituality is no longer something you practice only in quiet moments, but something that lives inside every decision you make, because you start recognizing that your sensitivity was never a flaw. It was your compass. As this awareness strengthens, you begin integrating the parts of yourself you were taught to suppress, the quiet anger that protects your boundaries, the intuition that senses what words try to hide, and the deep emotional intelligence that notices the undercurrents others ignore. And instead of trying to appear easygoing, you allow these parts to rise and unify, forming a self that is whole, grounded, and impossible to deceive. This integration changes how you move through the world because you stop apologizing for your awareness, no longer softening the truth to protect someone else's comfort, and no longer shrinking to make yourself more palatable. You become the kind of empath who can look at a situation and see all the layers at once, not just what someone says, but what they mean. Not just the story they present, but the intention beneath it. This is what Jung meant when he said that the kindest souls become dangerous once they understand themselves. They stop abandoning their inner truth to keep the peace, and they stop confusing kindness with self-sacrifice. You learn that saying no is not cruelty, it is clarity. You learn that stepping away is not coldness, it is self-respect. And you begin to see that your sensitivity once used against you is actually your most precise form of intelligence. As this transformation deepens, your relationships shift. You no longer respond to guilt, flattery, or urgency the way you once did, because your intuition now sits in the driver's seat, and the patterns that used to trap you lose their power. Instead of absorbing other people's emotions, you observe them. Instead of trying to fix everything, you choose what actually aligns with your values. Instead of over-explaining, you let your boundaries stand on their own. Professionally, this awakening reveals your creative power because you stop agreeing to roles that depend on your silence or compliance, and you step into responsibilities that honor your depth and your insight. You discover that your presence itself becomes more commanding, not loud, not forceful, but unmistakably grounded. At its core, this is the transformation Jung warned us about. When an empath stops being controlled by fear, confusion, or self-doubt, they become a person who cannot be manipulated, and that makes them dangerous only to the patterns that once thrived on their softness. Their sensitivity becomes strength, their intuition becomes strategy, and their inner light, once dimmed to comfort others, begins to shine with quiet authority. And when this happens, the empath no longer moves through life as someone who survives the world. They move through it as someone who can finally see it clearly. If this message resonates with you, comment below. I am stepping into my dangerous awakening. Your words help anchor your transformation and support our spiritual wisdom community. 2. From victimhood to conscious power. Empaths spend much of their lives moving through families, workplaces, and relationships as emotional shock absorbers, quietly taking on pain that was never theirs to hold. And Jung explained that this pattern does not come from pure love. but from an unconscious fear of abandonment that conditions you to soothe others before you soothe yourself, making you believe that peace depends on how well you bury your own needs. Yet this fragile balance eventually shatters, usually through a deep betrayal that forces you into a moment of undeniable truth, where the breakdown becomes the doorway to a higher form of spiritual development and the awakening of the self you once hid to survive. In that moment, you begin to see clearly how long you've mistaken self-sacrifice for loyalty, how often you diluted your intuition just to maintain harmony, and how deeply you believed that love had to be earned through endurance. As the shock settles, something powerful rises. The parts of you that were pushed into the shadows, your instincts, your intelligence, your emotional boundaries, and the righteous anger you were taught to suppress, emerge as strength, clarity, and inner truth, revealing that your sensitivity was never a curse, but a form of spirituality that becomes sharper once you stop giving yourself away. This shift is what Jung described as shadow integration, the moment when you stop existing as the wounded healer and begin reconnecting with the self you abandoned long ago. And this integration turns the empath into someone dangerous only because they can no longer be manipulated by guilt, chaos, or emotional games. You start recognizing patterns before they unfold, sensing truth beneath tone, and refusing to shrink yourself just to keep the peace. And because you finally see your own worth, the old survival behaviors dissolve. People-pleasing loses its grip. Silence is no longer your prison, and relationships built on emotional imbalance can no longer survive your presence. This transformation deepens as you reclaim your own energy, no longer pouring your compassion into people who drain it, no longer apologizing for your intuition, and no longer trying to heal others at the cost of wounding yourself. And what once felt like weakness becomes your inner authority, guiding you toward connections that honor your emotional truth rather than exploit it. Through this awakening, you become someone who does not fear losing people who were never committed, someone who embraces conflict when necessary because truth matters more than approval, and someone who recognizes that love without boundaries is not love, but self-erasure. Jung believed that this stage is where an empath becomes whole, because you stop living from fear and begin living from consciousness, stepping fully into the person you were meant to be before the world taught you to disappear. And as this transformation unfolds, its message becomes unmistakable. You were never meant to carry suffering that was not yours. You were never meant to trade your peace for acceptance. And you were never meant to forget your own power in order to keep others comfortable. True spiritual development begins when you stop abandoning yourself, when you trust the wisdom of your sensitivity, and when you choose to stand in the clarity that has been inside you all along. 3. Shadow integration and psychological wholeness. In the language of Carl Jung, this stage of your evolution is the nigredo, the inner dusk where the false self finally collapses under the weight of truth. And for an empath, this collapse almost always begins with betrayal. Betrayal forces you to look at the very things you tried to avoid, because the moment someone breaks what little trust you had left, the unconscious rises to the surface with a force you can no longer suppress. It is the breaking point that becomes the breakthrough, pulling you into a depth of awareness you didn't know you possessed. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, Jung warned. And this is the precise moment when that truth becomes real within you. As the emotional chaos settles, something extraordinary forms inside you. A calm that is not numbness, but integration. Your emotions and your intellect stop fighting each other and instead merge into a single, razor-sharp lens through which you see people clearly, not through fear, not through hope, and not through the stories you once told yourself to maintain peace. This alignment between truth and perception is the birth of psychological wholeness, and manipulators feel it immediately, even before you do. They sense that you are no longer accessible in the old way, because the buttons they used to push no longer exist. The version of you who absorbed blame, softened red flags, and excused harmful behavior has quietly died. From this inner stillness, your voice changes. You don't speak from anger, you speak from precision. You no longer raise your voice, yet your words strike with the accuracy of someone who finally sees all the invisible patterns at play. This is why your clarity terrifies people who once depended on your confusion. They cannot twist your emotions because your inner world is no longer fragmented. They cannot pull you into arguments because you no longer dance with dysfunction. You simply state the truth as it is, and the truth itself becomes confrontation without needing confrontation. This shift is subtle but powerful. You stop explaining your boundaries, and you stop apologizing for seeing what you see. You stop mistaking kindness for silence, and you stop negotiating your worth. As you integrate your shadow, the part of you that once held fear, hurt, denial, and old patterns, you become someone who cannot be deceived, because everything that once hid in darkness is now illuminated from within. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And in this transformation, you finally reclaim authorship over your fate. What truly makes the empath dangerous is not aggression, harshness, or emotional withdrawal. What makes you dangerous is your wholeness. It is the steady, grounded awareness that sees through manipulation before it begins. The calm refusal to engage in chaos. The silence that exposes lies more effectively than confrontation ever could. You become the kind of person who dismantles illusion simply by telling the truth plainly. Your presence becomes a mirror that people with hidden motives cannot tolerate, because your clarity reveals everything they hoped you wouldn't notice. And in this integrated state, you finally understand that your greatest power was never your sensitivity alone. Your real power is the union of sensitivity and awareness, the ability to walk through darkness with light that does not flicker, and to recognize that the most dangerous empath is the one who can no longer be controlled by anything outside of themselves. Have you ever faced your shadow and embraced it with compassion? If you have, share your experience in the comments to inspire others on their path of healing. If not, the comment, "I'm ready to face my shadow," today marks the beginning of your journey towards psychological wholeness. 4. Selective empathy and boundaries. Selective empathy is the moment an awakened empath learns that loving everyone without limits is not divine. It is self-erasure. True spirituality teaches that compassion without boundaries leads to exhaustion, and empathy without discernment becomes emotional dependency. Boundaries are not cold walls. They are sacred lines that define where your light ends and another's begins. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the awakening of the soul into its authentic self, free from the prison of others' expectations. To care selectively is to love consciously, with awareness rather than impulse. It means understanding that you can hold compassion for someone's pain without making their suffering your home. When you stop rescuing everyone, you begin rescuing yourself. Boundaries are not rejection. They are the language of self-respect. They teach others how to meet you, how to value your time, and how to honor your energy. This is not selfishness. It is clarity. Imagine empathy as a river. Without banks, it floods and destroys. With boundaries, it flows with strength, direction, and purpose. You are that river. When you allow your energy to spill into every broken vessel, you weaken your current. But when you create banks of discernment, you nourish the land that truly receives you. Selective empathy does not mean loving less. It means loving wisely. It transforms pity into empowerment and obligation into conscious choice. You stop giving from guilt and start giving from wholeness. Jung's vision of individuation is not about separating from the world, but returning to it with your soul intact. It is the sacred journey from reaction to response, from confusion to clarity, from people-pleasing to peace. In spiritual awakening, you learn that every no, said with truth, creates space for a deeper yes, aligned with your purpose. You stop absorbing every emotion around you like a sponge and start radiating light like a lighthouse guiding, not drowning. This is the heart of spiritual maturity. Understanding that love without boundaries becomes chaos, and empathy without structure becomes suffering. As you evolve, you begin to recognize the difference between compassion that heals and compassion that depletes. You no longer apologize for protecting your peace, because peace is your highest service to the world. When you stand firm in your truth, you allow others to find theirs. And this is where spirituality and spiritual awakening converge, where empathy becomes strength, boundaries become freedom, and your soul finally stands unshaken in its own divine clarity. 5. Trusting intuition and reclaiming power. You begin to awaken the moment you stop doubting your own perceptions and start honoring what your soul has always whispered. This is where spirituality becomes a living force, and spiritual development transforms from theory into embodied truth. When you start trusting your intuition instead of dismissing it, you instantly become immune to gaslighting, because you no longer rely on external validation to confirm what you already know internally. The empath, who once absorbed everyone's emotions unconsciously, now evolves into a conscious observer who sees manipulation in real time, yet chooses not to engage. You begin to understand that awareness itself is power, because you can see through illusion and still stay calm within it. And as Carl Jung wrote, true power is not about domination. It is having the capacity to destroy, but choosing not to. In that restraint lies your quiet authority. You realize that every reaction, once stolen by fear, now becomes a deliberate response guided by clarity. When others try to provoke you, you no longer defend or justify. You simply recognize energy for what it is and decide if it deserves your participation. This is emotional maturity at its highest form, where control no longer comes from suppressing feelings, but from mastering the energy behind them. Your silence begins to speak louder than your words. Your boundaries radiate self-respect, and your presence naturally commands peace. In this state, you embody compassion without becoming a savior, because you finally understand that saving yourself first is what truly serves others. The empath's transformation is not about becoming harder. It's about becoming clearer. You no longer mistake empathy for obligation or kindness for submission. You understand that saying no is a sacred act of self-love, and holding space for your truth is the most profound expression of compassion. You integrate the shadow you once feared, your anger, your grief, your intuition, your authority. And in doing so, you stop fragmenting yourself to fit into other people's comfort zones. Integration gives you freedom, and freedom gives you peace. You no longer hide your fire to keep others warm. You learn to be the steady flame that lights your own path, illuminating truth without burning yourself out. From this awareness, daily life becomes a spiritual practice. Before you respond, you check in with your body. What does my intuition feel right now? You let silence guide you before words do. You allow truth to rise without rushing it. Every decision becomes a reflection of inner trust rather than external pressure. You start noticing that energy never lies, and manipulation can't exist where there is awareness. You stop absorbing pain that isn't yours, because you now see it clearly and release it with compassion. And as this mastery unfolds, you realize that spiritual development is not about becoming untouchable, it's about becoming unshakable. You hold your peace like a sacred instrument, and your restraint becomes the ultimate symbol of strength. You live Carl Jung's insight every day. Real power is measured by what you choose not to destroy. Through trust, awareness, and integration, you become your own sanctuary, a living embodiment of spirituality grounded in truth, grace, and unwavering self-respect. If this message helped you trust your inner voice a little more, don't forget to subscribe for more spiritual wisdom on reclaiming your power and walking boldly in your truth. 6. The mirror effect and ethical strength. When an empath truly awakens, they become a living mirror reflecting truth so clearly that it leaves no place for deceit to hide. Around them, those who are genuine feel a deep sense of safety, while those who manipulate feel the walls closing in, exposed by the empath's quiet discernment. Yet as Carl Jung warned, when the shadow is integrated without moral grounding, the line between clarity and corruption begins to blur. Power, when not guided by compassion, becomes a weapon disguised as wisdom. True spiritual wisdom lies not in seeing everything, but in knowing what to do with what you see. Some awakened souls use their insight to heal. Others, consumed by pain, use it to punish. The difference lies in intention. An empath who walks the higher path chooses conscious love that is not naive, but fierce and discerning. It is the love that tells the truth even when it trembles, that protects without controlling, that forgives without forgetting the lesson. When your empathy evolves into awareness, you begin to understand that sensitivity is not weakness, but refined perception. You see through manipulation, not to judge, but to liberate yourself from it. Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people. To know your darkness is to take responsibility for your shadow before it takes responsibility for you. It is to understand that your emotional radar, once used for pleasing others, can now be used to honor truth. But Jung's final warning echoes. If you awaken your shadow without anchoring it in ethics, you risk becoming what once hurt you. Many empaths fall into this trap, mistaking control for care or revenge for justice until they realize that power without love is hollow. To live with spiritual wisdom means to choose awareness over impulse. It is not about proving others wrong, but about staying right within yourself. Every boundary you set becomes a statement of self-respect. Every silence you keep becomes a refusal to feed chaos. You do not fight darkness with more darkness. You disarm it with clarity. You learn to walk away not out of fear, but out of faith that peace is more valuable than validation. And so, the empath's most dangerous transformation is not the ability to expose others. It is the ability to stay kind while being fully awake. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To live this truth is to let your empathy mature into strength, your perception into purpose, and your heart into an instrument of discernment. When you combine compassion with conscience, love becomes both your sword and your shield. This is the sacred balance of power and mercy, the mark of a true, awakened empath who no longer absorbs the world's pain, but transforms it into light. 7. Transformation in relationships and society. In love, the awakened empath no longer confuses chaos for passion or emotional rescue for love. They now crave emotional maturity, honesty, and balance. They are no longer drawn to drama or the thrill of fixing others, because their spiritual awakening has taught them that true connection is born from clarity, not confusion. They stop chasing those who drain their peace, and instead, they become magnetic to those who meet them in truth. Every relationship now reflects the level of their healing. Those built on illusion dissolve, and those rooted in authenticity grow stronger. As Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." For the awakened empath, fate is no longer a trap of unhealed patterns, but a conscious choice made through awareness. In family dynamics, this transformation shakes the foundation of old roles. The empath, who once absorbed everyone's pain, who once played the peacemaker, fixer, or silent sufferer, begins to withdraw from those toxic scripts. They stop trying to save what refuses to change and understand that healing does not mean carrying everyone's burdens. Their refusal to participate in dysfunction forces the system to evolve or collapse. And this collapse, though painful, is sacred. It reveals the truth that love without respect is control, and loyalty without boundaries is self-betrayal. Through this process, spirituality becomes practical. It is not about endless forgiveness, but about alignment with what honors the soul. The awakened empath finally says, "This is where the cycle ends with me," turning generational pain into generational wisdom. At work, their perception sharpens like light through a prism. They no longer endure environments fueled by manipulation, fear, or power games. They sense toxicity before it takes form, hearing the hidden tones behind words and feeling the weight of false intentions. The awakened empath aligns their career with integrity and purpose, choosing work that nourishes rather than depletes. They understand that success without peace is failure in disguise, and so they walk away from anything that compromises their spirit, even if it looks impressive from the outside. In doing so, they redefine success not as status, but as authenticity. their spiritual awakening becomes a silent revolution against exploitation, proving that peace and purpose can coexist. In friendships, they no longer gather people to fill a void, but to share a vibration. Their circle grows smaller, yet more radiant. They no longer feel guilty for outgrowing those who refuse to evolve, because they have learned that energy is sacred currency. They now invest only in relationships where there is reciprocity, not obligation. Their presence no longer feeds dysfunction. It fuels truth. Every conversation, every connection becomes a mirror reflecting the depth of their growth. Friendships built on gossip or pretense fade, replaced by those who honor presence, honesty, and growth. Through all of this, the empath becomes what Jung once called the fully integrated individual, one who embraces both light and shadow without losing compassion. They no longer live at the mercy of emotions. They master them. They no longer seek belonging through pain. They embody it through peace. Their spirituality is no longer an escape, but a grounded awareness that transforms every corner of their life. Love becomes conscious. Family becomes truthful. Work becomes aligned, and friendship becomes sacred. This is the empath's true awakening, a life no longer powered by suffering, but illuminated by discernment, strength, and spiritual wisdom. Leave your like and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more deep insights like this. Let's raise collective awareness and heal together through spiritual wisdom. Comment below. I am transforming with love and purpose. If you're ready to create conscious relationships and a better world. 8. Death and rebirth of identity. The death and rebirth of identity is one of the most profound stages of spirituality and spiritual development, because it forces you to confront the painful truth that not everything you once were is meant to follow you into the person you are becoming. Carl Jung said that there is no coming to consciousness without pain, and you begin to understand this the moment you feel the old layers of your identity starting to fall away. The moment you realize that the roles you performed for acceptance, the patterns you kept for survival, and the personas you wore for love are no longer compatible with the truth rising within you. This inner shedding feels like loss, even when it is liberation. And as your false self begins to die, it brings with it a kind of grief that is difficult to explain, because you are not just letting go of people or habits. You are letting go of the version of yourself you presented to the world for years. And as this older identity dissolves, relationships that once felt familiar begin to feel distant. Conversations that once comforted you start to drain you. And environments that once felt like home become places where you can no longer breathe. What many people call loneliness appears, but for the empath in transformation, this loneliness slowly becomes sacred. It becomes a sanctuary where you finally hear your intuition without interference. A place where you no longer carry the weight of trying to be who everyone expects you to be. In this solitude, you begin to understand that separation is not abandonment. It is alignment. You are not losing people. You are losing illusions. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. This phase is the metamorphosis Jung spoke of, the inner death that makes rebirth possible. And even though this transformation feels heavy, it is the first time you start to sense your real strength. The empath, who once absorbed every emotion around them, begins to recognize what is theirs and what is not. The person who once shaped themselves to fit the room begins to reshape the room with their presence. You start to understand that your sensitivity, once treated as a weakness, was always your compass. And now that you are no longer hiding it, it becomes your power. As the false identity continues to fall away, you stop apologizing for your boundaries, you stop explaining your intuition, and you stop negotiating your worth. You begin choosing peace over approval, truth over comfort, and authenticity over belonging. And with every internal shift, you step closer to the person you were always meant to be before the world taught you to shrink. This is the quiet rebirth, not loud, not dramatic, but steady and undeniable, the moment you finally see yourself without distortion. It is the moment the empath evolves from a passive absorber of energy into an aware guardian of their own inner world. It is the moment you realize that the old self did not die because something was wrong with you, but because something powerful was awakening inside you. And as you continue walking forward, you begin to see that the death of the false self was not an ending. It was the beginning of the truest chapter of your spiritual development. The chapter where you finally live from your essence instead of your wounds, from your clarity instead of your fear, and from your inner truth instead of the expectations that once shaped your entire life. 9. Practical path to integration. You begin this path of inner integration by acknowledging suppressed emotions, because the truth is that the feelings you bury do not dissolve. They crystallize into quiet patterns that shape your choices without your consent. When you dare to name your grief, your irritation, your disappointment, your fear, or the exhaustion you have carried for years, you take back authorship of your inner life. Carl Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this is the cornerstone of your transformation. Allowing yourself to see what you once hid. As you breathe into these emotions instead of resisting them, your nervous system learns that truth is safer than denial, and you begin to release the weight you once mistook for personality. From this emotional clarity, you can finally reclaim your intuition and your self-trust, the two abilities society often trains empaths to abandon. You override your inner no to keep the peace. You silence your instinct to avoid conflict, and you distrust your own perception because others tell you that you are too sensitive. But intuition is not a weakness, it is guidance. Self-trust is not arrogance, it is alignment. When you start honoring even the smallest signals, a tight jaw, a sudden exhaustion, a shift in your gut, you begin rebuilding the internal compass that has always loved you. Self-trust grows not from perfection, but from keeping small promises to yourself until your inner voice becomes stronger than the noise around you. With this renewed clarity, you learn to practice selective empathy, a core expression of spiritual wisdom that protects you from emotional burnout. You no longer confuse compassion with responsibility because you finally understand that loving someone does not mean carrying their entire emotional world. You are allowed to witness without absorbing, to care without collapsing, to support without sacrificing your own well-being. You ask yourself simple but powerful questions. Is this mine to hold? Is this the right moment? Am I the right person? And if any answer is no, you step back with grace instead of guilt. knowing that boundaries do not limit love, they refine it. This inner strength naturally leads you to speak truth without fear, because silence that protects a lie becomes a slow betrayal of your soul. Your words do not have to be loud to be powerful. They only need to be clean. When you say what you truly mean, even with a shaking voice, you reclaim integrity as a lived practice instead of a concept. You discover who respects your honesty and who depended on your silence. Jung reminded us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And truth-telling is one of the ways you honor that privilege every day. Finally, you build new boundaries and values your internal architecture for a life you can stand inside with dignity. Without boundaries, your empathy becomes a weapon others can use against you. With boundaries, it becomes a gift that flows instead of drains. You define what you will always protect: your rest, your solitude, your prayer, your creativity, your mental clarity, your emotional safety, and what you will no longer negotiate: disrespect, manipulation, guilt-driven expectations, or spiritual bypassing disguised as love. These vows become the quiet laws of your sovereignty, guiding your choices with steadiness instead of fear. When these practices weave together, feeling what you suppressed, trusting what you know, loving with discernment, speaking your truth, and honoring your values, you shift from survival into sovereignty. You no longer live as a sponge for other people's chaos, but as a steward of your own energy. This is the empath's most dangerous transformation, the one Carl Jung foresaw. Not a descent into harshness, but a rise into clarity, where your compassion finally has structure and your light finally has protection. 10. Becoming whole and dangerous to exploitation. Integrated empaths are not cold. They are complete, and this completeness is what makes them powerful in a world that once fed on their softness. They embody a balance that many people never reach: strong yet soft, compassionate yet boundaried, loving yet independent, sensitive yet unmanipulable. As you step into this level of inner integration, you begin to understand why Carl Jung warned that the most spiritually awakened empath becomes dangerous, not because they harm others, but because they can no longer be controlled by systems built on exploitation, gaslighting, and deceit. Every part of you that once apologized for existing now stands in alignment with itself, and that alignment becomes your shield. This transformation begins the moment you stop chasing approval and realize you no longer need permission to trust what you feel. When you cease outsourcing your sense of truth, the old power structures around you crumble. You recognize that what you once called kindness was sometimes a survival strategy, a way to keep peace, avoid conflict, and protect others from their own emotions. As your spirituality deepens, you reclaim your intuition not as a vague emotional reaction, but as a precise form of intelligence that reveals who is genuine and who is simply familiar with your triggers. With this clarity, you learn to separate compassion from compliance. Compassion honors your heart, while compliance sacrifices your boundaries. Once you understand the difference, you stop rescuing people from consequences they created. You stop translating disrespect into excuses like "they're stressed," and you stop stepping into roles you were never meant to carry. Every boundary you set without guilt sharpens your spiritual awakening, making your energy clearer and warmer, no longer distorted by fear or people-pleasing. This is when you start seeing the architecture of manipulation without absorbing it. You notice the tone that does not match the words, the stories that keep shifting, the apologies that only work if you silence yourself. When you trust these signals, deceit loses its power because it can no longer root itself in your compassion. As your inner balance strengthens, your worth detaches from self-sacrifice and reconnects to self-respect. Instead of giving to be chosen, you give from overflow. Instead of performing for love, you offer connection honestly. Instead of clinging to relationships built on potential, you choose those built on reciprocity. These choices make you dangerous in the most necessary way, because you no longer provide predators with the hiding places they used to find in your empathy. You stop being available to emotional chaos and start being consistent with yourself, saying no without apology, forgiving without reopening doors, loving without abandoning your own clarity, and listening without losing the sound of your own voice. This is the posture that intimidates exploitative people. You cannot be gaslit because you now verify. You cannot be drained because you now protect your energy. You cannot be deceived because you trust the truth your body communicates before your mind rationalizes it away. Each time you choose truth over harmony, you shift from peacekeeping to peacemaking. Peacekeeping silences you to keep others comfortable, but peacemaking restores what is real, even if it disrupts the illusion. This marks the moment your empathy evolves from a wound into a strength, from a liability into a gift, from a soft target into a clear presence that is loving but not permissive. In this integrated state, you no longer audition for acceptance or negotiate your worth. You belong to yourself more than to anyone's narrative, and with that belonging comes discernment. You no longer confuse intensity for intimacy, attention for affection, or proximity for loyalty. You no longer let gratitude blind you to patterns of entitlement. This is what makes the awakened empath truly dangerous to exploitation, not rage, not bitterness, but coherence. A coherent empath cannot be talked out of what they know, shamed into giving what they do not owe, or manipulated into rebuilding cages they have already outgrown. In this wholeness, your sensitivity becomes the wise instrument it was always meant to be tuned to truth, anchored in self-respect, and aligned with a spirituality that protects your light rather than draining it. In the end, Jung's warning is clear. When an empath finally integrates their shadow, trusts their intuition, and stops allowing the world to define their worth, they become someone who can no longer be controlled. This transformation isn't about becoming dangerous to others. It's about becoming unshakable within yourself. If this message from spiritual wisdom resonated with you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming videos on Carl Jung, healing, and inner awakening.